Happy Friday, everyone. Today we're here for our Total Traffic and Conversion broadcast, and we're going to talk about creating opportunities. And we have some guests here. And Betty, maybe you can introduce your guests for today.
Oh, sure. It's very much a pleasure, Craig. I'd like to introduce my friend Maria Tensin, who I met in an international networking group months and months ago, and we decided that we would talk with one another, and got to be good friends, as well as cooking up things to do together, which is always a fun thing. It's my favorite, actually, as a creative person, to come up with something that I can do with people that I enjoy. So Maria certainly fits in that category. She's from Eastern Europe originally. Actually, she's from Asia originally, and has a very interesting backstory about how she came to learn the amazing things that she's learned. I took her master class, and I found that it was unlike anything I'd encountered in the West to teach business skills and strategic planning. So Maria has insights that have not been widely introduced in Western thought to our business processes. And it's very exciting to think of what we could do in bringing this knowledge to the rest of the world. So, Maria, thank you.
Thank you, Betty, for your kind words. It was a pleasure to meet you. Yes, I remember that we met before the new year. It was the last year, maybe in autumn. And we started talking about different things. And for me, it was a very important connection, because I felt absolutely free telling about the things I'm doing here, because I started introducing the technology I work in to the people in the Western business community recently, after the war in Ukraine started. And it was quite a challenging period for me, because I needed to adjust the concept to the needs of the Western business community, because it differs quite much from what we can see in Russian business space, or in Ukrainian, or in Kazakhstan, or in the Asian countries, for instance. So what I'm doing, I'm a strategist. I work mostly with startups, technological startups, IT startups. I help them to create a business strategy for their project. And this strategy allows to turn all the obstacles and risks for your project, for your business, into your advantages before you start moving towards your goals. So this technology of the strategy development allows to secure, for instance, the investments. Yes, it allows to give the confidence to the startup founders to achieve their goals with the minimal resources. Because in this technology, we don't consider finances as a strategic resource at all. Because if we do, then we can stuck at the same place. So we use the different strategic resources to achieve the biggest goals. This technology is called active scripting. It was created in ex-Soviet Union by two academic researchers and entrepreneurs. And it's been used by the greatest state and commercial corporations like Gazprom, for instance. And of course, we can discuss the toxic influence of Gazprom, for instance, but we see that it's quite successful because they use this approach in many of their projects. And in the last 30 years, thousands of entrepreneurs and companies in Asia and in Russia used this technology to achieve success, actually. So I learned it from its creator. His name is Andrei Bagokin. He's my teacher, and we work together on some projects. And I decided to adjust this concept to the needs of smaller businesses and to bring it to the West. So here I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think you and Burke have a lot of things in common about your approach. And so, do you want to make some comments now, Burke, or introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Okay. Hi, I'm Burke Franklin. My company is called businesspowertools.com. I created the Biz Plan Builder business planning software system about 30 years ago. And it was in response to a friend of mine had a deal going with Apple. Apple wanted to see his business plan because at the time, the Small Business Administration had done a study of the proverbial 4 out of 5 businesses that fail and found that 65% of those businesses that failed because they had no business plan. That was one thing in common about them. So Apple wanted to see his plan. I knew nothing about business plans at the time, really, but I knew how to make a catalog. I used to work for the Sharper Image catalog and work for Texas Instruments, and other combinations of things in the past enabled me to help him write a business plan for this. He got the deal. And so I help people write business plans and get their deal ideas funded by prominent venture capitalists in Silicon Valley over the next year. And about a year into that, I'm standing in the shower thinking, I'm going to hurt somebody if I see another crappy business plan, because most people seem to write them as if, well, we all used to BS our way through papers in college. So, but this isn't how you write a business plan. They want to see details. So I thought to myself, why don't I just take all this content I developed and make a template that people could use and do it themselves? So that became Biz Plan Builder. And out of that, I grew Business Power Tools. And it's just one thing after another where I'm really, if I was to go further back into childhood and remember in Popular Mechanics magazine, somebody had invented a 200 mile per gallon carburetor. And I was wondering, where the hell did that go? How come that didn't turn into a company? How come we don't get 200 miles per gallon today? And how can I help entrepreneurs who have ideas? Well, maybe not as grandiose as that, but you've got some great idea that could save the world even, or make you a lot of money or something like that, that just should be turned into a business. How do you wrap a business around a good idea? And that's what all of the Business Power Tools software templates are about.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, Betty or Roy, do you want to maybe do a little overview of our total traffic and conversion? Sort of our philosophy and why we have we're inviting this conversation about creating opportunities.
Yeah, I'll start. I have been helping businesses and business owners and entrepreneurs being found online for now 14 years because it's one of the best ways to build your company. And for startups, it's one of the most important things that you can do to become profitable as quickly as possible. I started it because there were people that had been working for others in 2008 and 2009, and all of a sudden they found themselves out of a job because of the business climate here. The banking sector was playing all kinds of new games, and it didn't work out. And a lot of companies went out of business, and other ones, because the banking business was not there to fund what they were trying to do, they basically were standing in place for a couple of years. And so many people were out of work. Some of them wanted to start new businesses. There wasn't a good way to actually generate attraction to people that wanted what you had, unless you did something like what I was doing, creating websites and driving traffic to these websites. So that's where it started for me. And I've been helping businesses and entrepreneurs get found online for the last 14 years. What I wasn't doing was really taking all of these people that were coming to the websites or whatever properties that company was using to find their ideal prospects and converting them. I was counting on the business to do it themselves. But because we were really living in different times and online conversion was much more important, I got a hold of Greg, and not necessarily for the reason that I'm talking about now, but for the reason that I needed to be able to use a product called Kartra, which is great for running a business. And I really was having trouble figuring it out. He happens to be an expert at it. And so I got together with him, but then I furthered the idea of being able to convert these prospects. And Greg is very good at that also. So the two of us were actually able to provide a better solution than I was by myself. And hopefully then Greg was by himself. So we had a better solution. Then we found Betty and we added her to the mix. And now we had three people that could all help with various different parts of what we could offer a business so that they could grow. Betty was excellent at content and posting and all the very important parts that need to be fit into the mix. So the three of us now could offer a better solution than any one of us could offer. And that's kind of where we've taken this Friday call. We want other people that we can collaborate with to enhance the solutions that we can offer to the same basic clientele. And our target market, the five of us, is very similar. Does that sum it up?
No, that's very good, Roy. Yeah, for sure. And you know, we each have different aspects, and I think Betty and Roy and I all kind of did things more or less on our own before, and we're having fun taking a collaborative approach to things and bringing
Much
other
more
people
fun.
on the team, and you know, so that's why we get interesting. So maybe do you have a few more comments, Betty?
Yeah, what I really am enjoying about, well, there's a number of things I'm enjoying about the collaboration. And one of them is that I'm learning new things all the time. For example, we were in a client meeting just a few minutes ago, and I think each of us were learning new things from each other as we were developing the solution for the client that was going to address exactly where we are in the process today of developing her effective marketing. So it's, if I'm not learning, I don't want to do it. So that's been a really great thing, because I know that I'm bringing a better level of service and effectiveness to people I work with all the time through this process. I love language and communication, and I love collaboration. So it makes me very happy to bring together people that I enjoy and think of ways that we can create better values in the world and better value for our clients. Like raise the tone of business through, for example, the insights that Maria brings to how to use the current situation that you have in a different way to create the opportunities, not waiting for an opportunity to come, not, quote, looking for an opportunity or something like that, realizing that you have within yourself what you need to develop in order to create the solutions that are going to work for you. This is a very valuable piece of insight. She calls it a technology, and it's an advantage to be able to understand things from different perspectives so that you see what's really going on rather than getting stuck in your own idea. You know, and similarly, Burke has a process that you can just say, okay, here's what I need, run it through his process and go, okay, this works, this does not work. You know, I have a cousin who's a systems analyst for major chemical plants and things like that. And he says it all comes down to one thing. Does it say plant go boom? If it says plant go boom, we don't do it. Okay. So with Burke's software, you can go through your idea, and if it says plant go boom, you don't do it, instead of building the whole plant and blowing the thing up. So,
Well, it's better to fail. They talk about failing fast.
yeah,
I'd say it's better to fail fast on paper than it is to do it for real or do it in real
Absolutely.
life. Even
exactly.
Yeah.
Buckminster Fuller said a long time ago, you know, a mistake in the plan requires an eraser. A mistake in the field requires a checkbook.
True.
Good point. Good, very good point.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I worked for a company years ago doing mineral exploration, and all the workers were saying, you know, bonus, bonus, bonus. And the owner of the company says, no screw ups, no screw ups. So you don't want to, you know, spend a lot of time putting your ladder against the wrong tree, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. That's the advantage of a shared mind. You know, like we can look at it and go, okay, here's an idea. And is this a good idea, or can we come up with a better idea using the insights and skills that each of us have? That's the strength of collaboration.
yeah, for sure. And things that make sense to us, you know, when you get into a group conversation, as either we've misunderstood something or we're we're barking up the wrong tree. So, you know, it's good to have you know, collectively we can get to the point. And if, you know, if Roy and Betty and I all kind of agree on something, then there's a good chance that it's probably, you know, worth doing. So so Marie, what's your perspective on these, like strategy for sure? Really very consistent with what Burke is saying. You know, you have to have your goals and your strategy in mind, and what kind of things that you do to help prevent people going off the rails. So
Well, when I say strategy, I mean big goals in long-term perspective. And usually it's one of the hardest things to achieve, because in long-term perspective, there are many changes in the reality. The world is uncertain. So usually I see, working with my clients, that they are a bit anxious to set long-term goals, especially big goals. But when it comes to developing a startup, when it comes to creating something absolutely new, innovative, and unique, we should know where we're moving to, right? We cannot just try and see what would happen. So setting strategic goals and creating the way to achieve them is the very significant part of any business. And I will not open America if I tell that every business has 3 levels of management, right? Operational management, tactical, and strategic. So I deal with strategic management. And it's not about management, actually, it's about development, because strategic thinking is an absolutely different way of perception. And strategic thinking is individual, and it depends on our background, our life experience, our education, our history of success and failures, and many, many other factors. And when it comes to opportunity development, I can say that opportunity is the greatest business resource for any project, for any entrepreneur, because a small opportunity can give you great success. And the most of people consider opportunities in life and business as something accidental. So the moment came, something happened, and I can use this great opportunity to make next step, right? And it can take a long time. If it comes to opportunity development in the present moment, sometimes we have quite limited resources, we have a limited vision, and it seems strange that we actually can get any opportunity we need, any opportunity our business needs. So my job is to teach how you and anyone can create any opportunity in the needed period of time using quite a simple algorithm. And it doesn't matter what kind of mindset you have. Are you a beginner in entrepreneurship, or you already have business, you are experienced, or you are running a startup, or you're trying to scale up your business? It doesn't matter. Recognizing, developing, and creating opportunities is a skill based on exercising an algorithm if you know it. So, what if we would consider opportunities as something we can use as a business resource that we can create, like financial resource or like marketing resource or something else? What would you say?
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have one of the things is with recent events like the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and various things is and just business is changing really fast. So a lot of things that were sort of we assumed that were givens are not givens anymore, and so we have to be kind of creative. So I think we're running this edge of having strategic plans and some processes and being a little bit of creative to be able to make things up. So maybe we can we have any more ideas on that here.
I do. I was talking to a client the other day about, he was looking at the business plan and thinking, how do I come up with my strategy? And I said, well, there's, I quote Einstein. Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, my life depended on it, I'd spend 55 minutes really making sure I could define the problem. And a lot of people, they really don't understand the problem. They don't define the problem. They're so busy looking for some kind of answer. And if you look at, well, first define the problem, like in the business plan, how many people or who has this problem? How many of them are there? Of course, investors always want to know, well, how big a market is there for this problem, for solving it? And you look at the market and the market segments and the conditions and the people that are in it, you pretty much get and spend that time really defining the problem and how are you going to do it. It's kind of like getting your puzzle pieces all in front of you on the table, even though you don't have the box cover to look at. But you can get all these pieces, and then the strategy, how to reach them, how to work with them, what to sell them, I won't say practically solves itself, but you're really not going to come up with a strategy out of thin air unless you really define the problem first. And Einstein said, and he could solve that problem in the last 5 minutes if you really understood it well enough. And a lot of people just don't take the time to really define the problem in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what really creates success, is understanding what need there is and finding a way to fill it. What do people actually need? They know what they want. They know what they think they need. They know what they think they want. But do they know what they really need? And as a person who's offering a service, if you can look into their situation and say, here's, it goes back to defining their problem in your own mind. What is their problem really? And in what way am I able to fill that? Can I solve this problem for this person or for this business? And if so, then it comes down to that last 5 minutes of figuring out the nuts and bolts of how is that actually going to work. But it does encompass understanding what their situation truly is, which isn't always exactly the situation that they perceive because they're in the middle of the situation. When you look at it from a more detached point of view, you can say, okay, here's my market, for instance, from your own point of view. Here's my market. Here's the problem that I solve, and here's how I do it. But it all does come back to understanding what the problem is. The flip side of that is that the problem is actually the opportunity. And that's where the way that Maria presents relating to your information is so valuable, because the very same thing that led to you having your failures is also the key to your successes.
There's a concept called language market fit. There's a whole bunch of talk about product market fit, but probably the more important concept is language market fit. So you've got people, they've got a problem, but you've got to talk to them in the language that they understand and how they define their problem as well. Because, if you could tell somebody, I've got the solution to your problem, but they say, you don't understand my problem. I've spent a lot of time calling up customers and asking, how would you describe this? What would you say? What words would you use? And it's very important to use their words, because you could have the solution to their problem, but if they don't recognize your solution as how they see the solution, or you haven't identified the problem the way they identify the problem. There's got to be that language bit where you're speaking the same language. Yeah, you got to give them what they need, but you've got to start out with selling them what they want, because they're not going to buy what they need. It's like telling little kids to eat vegetables. It's like, you eat vegetables. Like, no, I don't want it. I see that with business plans all the time. People don't want to write business plans. I don't blame them. But if an investor says, I'll invest with you. In fact, every investor I've talked to, every consultant I've talked to said, I won't even work with, I don't say quite that dramatically, but basically, I don't want to talk to you unless you've got a business plan, which is music to my ears. But then the person who I'm selling to needs to hear that from the investors and their consultants, because otherwise they don't realize the gravity and the necessity for that. Just saying, you got to use the right words.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Another thing I've found out is that if you've got a solution to a problem, you got to make sure your market can afford that problem, because they may need to solve it, but they may not have the money to do that. So make sure your target market has the money to be able to afford your solution. I think that's as important as anything with a startup.
That's a challenge. What's this problem worth to solve? And is it their top priority? I mean, there's an old saying about, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. Well, not if you don't have a mouse problem. So you got to have a mouse. You got to show them you have a mouse problem. In fact, I've got the trap that'll catch this giant rat. And so if people perceive that they have it, then all of a sudden how you leverage your way up to being the top of the priority of the things to do today is to buy your product.
Right. Yeah.
And they may not recognize the problem. I mean, they don't realize, oh my God, I've got this problem. Well, yeah, you're not going to get any money from investors unless you have a business plan. They don't know that. So that's part of my education process. Or certainly it'll be easier to raise money from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
So how does that play in, I'll say, Eastern Europe, or in Europe where you are, Maria?
it's not about Eastern Europe. I think it's about the I would say the different paradigms, right? Because, for instance, in my work, I don't deal with the things you work with. So I don't deal with creating business plans or creating marketing strategies or something like this. I mostly work with the leaders' thinking. And it's not about psychology, and it's not about mindfulness, let's say. No, I work with the way they see their business. They put efforts, they make decisions, they make choices, and they take actions. And I work also with their vision and how they create and set the goals, because it creates the biggest impact on all the consequences. Their decisions, their choices, their actions, and so on. And I also work with the team building, because creating the right team is a half of your success. So I'm not very good at making business plans, though. But when it comes to talking to the clients, when I talk to my clients first time, when I talk to my prospective clients, I usually don't see that they need a strategy. Nobody comes to me to solve the issue with their strategy management or with creating a strategy, let's say, or to develop opportunities. Because if you make the Google search, you will see that there is nothing about creating opportunities or opportunities development. There are a lot of things about business development opportunities, but nothing about creating opportunities. But what is an opportunity, actually? Opportunity is an event, a situation that gives us more resources and benefits that we spend to get it. So it's not about using tools, instruments, or approaches. It's about creating the events in future.
Come here. I'm not going outside right now.
So, and yes, and it's the different paradigm of work, you see? So I'm listening to you and everything is so interesting, but I know that the things I'm working with are a bit different, because the most of people coming to me, they are not aware that they need my services. They come because they wonder, what is it about? Opportunities development. This is the hook. But if we cannot create the row of events in our business, the row of events we need, the row of opportunities we can use, there would be no chance to use tactics, tools, instruments, and all the rest. So this is how I consider the approach to the opportunities development. So I don't use instruments. I use the leaders, the business leaders' mindset and way how they perceive the world, because it's about the perception. So my work is a bit different, and it's not about mindfulness. It's not about psychology. It's about how we consider the things happening around us, how we can recognize the potential perspectives in the present moment, in future, and how we can involve them, develop them for our benefits, no matter what is happening around. So I do a bit different things.
Yeah. Well, I think actually one of the things that Roy and Betty and I have is we're basically freelancers, right? So we never know who's going to walk in the door, and every human has a different perspective. Everybody has a different view on things, and Betty is especially good at sitting down and going through a process to sort out where they're coming from and where they're at and where they want to go, and then coming up with a creative solution. And I think if I understand what you're saying, is really that's where you're starting from, is where they want to go, and without necessarily having a structure behind it. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, there is a structure, because it's a technology. Technology, it means that there are step-by-step. There is a step-by-step process. There is a predictable result, and you can cycle it, increasing results at each stage, and you can repeat it whenever you want. So it's a technology. It's not about just realizing something and getting some insights. No, it's technology because it has all those four traits. Yes, step-by-step process, predictable result, cycling, and it's repeatable. There is a structure, yes.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's the insight that I was getting as I was listening to you was one of my sons is career military, and when I was visiting him recently, we were talking about projects on our family property, and he said, well, what's the objective here? And that's very much like what you're describing. What's the strategic result? And then when you understand what it is that you actually want to achieve, then you can begin to perceive what it is that you have at your disposal, as you're calling them, your tactics, Maria, for developing the results that you want and creating a pathway from where you are, or not exactly a pathway, but a system to take you step by step in this repeatable way that says, okay, we have these resources. And I think key is taking a smaller resource and turning it into a larger resource. As a working artist, I'm really familiar with that process. You take something that apparently has a certain value, and then because of your perception and the way that you use your perception to interact with that resource, you create a work of art. And so it's similar in that way as a creative process.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So that, Betty, reminded me, I worked for a company creating helium recovery systems, total mad science things. And the owner basically said the whole process was taking stuff that comes in little boxes and making it into a bigger box, right? One of the things we worked on was on a 30-foot skid that went on a flat deck went to the University of Los Angeles. But anyway, that was his whole thing. The whole business is just taking stuff in small things and making bigger packages out of it. In a way, that's what most businesses are. And that's we're kind of building up. We're hoping to build up this collaboration, total traffic and conversion collaboration, where we have a number of people who each bring something different. We certainly have people who could use some help with their business plan and their strategic planning and other things in their business, and to some degree in our projects that the three of us have been doing together, it's kind of a learning curve to figure out where people are coming from and what kind of structures and procedures will make everything work. So we do have a template in mind, and other people have templates in mind, but quite a few people we deal with don't really have a plan at all, really. And they just have an intention, and we help try to put some order onto the intention and head in the direction.
Yeah, that's a big part of the function we've had thus far, is to create that framework for people and then work on how to have a system that fills in that framework. Who's doing what, when are they doing it, when is it going to be ready, how will it be implemented? But before all of that, it's got the same question I asked before at the beginning and at the end of every conversation I have about writing is, what do you want this to do? And that comes back to, what is your strategic goal in this instance, in this situation, beyond the piece of writing? Where do you want it to go? What do you want to accomplish by having this tool, which could be the system that Total Traffic and Conversion puts together for you? Where do you want to go in your life? What do you want your business to do? And what kind of an impact do you want to have? Well, what kind of an influence do you want to have on the world? How are you going to move the needle?
Yeah, those are very good considerations. I'm working on those personally myself.
Oh, yeah. Every day.
every day.
Yeah.
I believe we all do.
Yeah, I hope so.
One of the things I've seen a lot before, and I was on a panel of judges for a business plan competition in Texas many, many years ago. And it was me, and there were 3 venture capitalists. And every single team that came forward and presented to us, every single one of them said, we're going to do $1 million in our first year. And I thought to myself, is it just me? And I looked at the VCs on a break and I said, is it just me, or does everybody do $1 million in their first year? And they all just started laughing like, yeah, you'd be blown away at how often people come in and say that. And I realized what's happening here is these people, they just pull this $1 million out of the air. They don't create that story. You've got to lay this foundation down and say, okay, look, there's X number of people in the world with this problem. The next thing would be, what market share do I think I can get with my business? Now, the first part is an empirical fact. In fact, if you could put in the business plan, I say this with a video and an example in the spreadsheet template. Here's where you want to put a real number. And I use, for example, boat anchors. And so I start with sailboats. How many sailboat owners are there in the world? Well, I don't really know. But for example, if you went and looked at like Sailing Magazine and their masthead, and it said they have 350,000 paying subscribers, you could legitimately put 350,000 in that cell in the spreadsheet. And then you put right behind it, you say, Sailing Magazine, 350,000 paying subscribers. Now you have an empirical fact that a VC or anybody when doing due diligence to verify that what you say is what's so, they can see that, go, check, got it. Okay, what's next? Then the next block down is what percentage, what market share do I think I'm going to get? And most people say, I'm going to sell 1,000 units. Where do you get that from? And then if you're pitching VCs, you can bet that everybody in the room's got an MBA and a calculator in front of them. And they're going to say, well, if you say you've got 350,000, you're going to sell this many, that means they're going to calculate your market share. Well, I like my people to be ahead of them on that and start with the market share and think that way, because it's going to end up there anyway. And so, that would be the arguable, the negotiable part. But once you agree on that, I'm going to get a X% market share of this. And for God's sake, don't say 1%. That's the one, there's like 3 things in this. If you say 1%, bang, shoot yourself in the head, because you just did. It's just one of those numbers that if it's 0.9, 1.1, anything but 1%, it's so easy to say. If we got 1% of the market. Anyway, that said, so now you've got this market share. It might be 5 or 6%. Then it's math. 350 times market share. Then you've got units. And so now you're starting on a real foundation of believable, solid something with numbers. And then you can go down below that and say, okay, if I sell X percentage of these guys at this price, now we know how many units we sell. We know what the revenue is going to be. And you don't come up with some cockamamie number that's yanked out of the air called $1 million. You've got a real number. And now you've got a basis to start really talking about the rest of this business and its promise, because you're basing it on some real factual numbers, and they can see how you get there from here. I think that's really the problem most people do. They can't show how they arrive at these numbers. They can't show the math. And it's not complicated math. It's just one step after another that adds up.
Yeah, some of those numbers are what you get you run out of Shark Tank.
Well, you see it on Shark Tank all the time. I can't watch that show anymore. It's just too painful. I see there's somebody on stage with their 200 mile per gallon carburetor, and they just blow it. I go, And
then somebody will say, well, how do you know anyone will buy your boat anchor? Right? They haven't.
That's the thing. You've got to spend the 55 minutes on the problem. And the last thing I'll say about this one concept on the numbers is, for God's sake, don't say, oh, and our numbers are conservative. That's like the third bullet to shoot yourself in the head with. So, real number to start with. Any number but 1 is your percentage of market share. And these are your numbers. Don't say conservative. Tell me what the number you think they are. And don't say they're conservative, because that's just what discredits you completely.
Well, yeah. Betty and I are helping some people launch online courses, right? And, the potential is high, but you can't even count on the first one, right? Like if you can sell 10, generally you can sell 100 and you can sell 1,000, but, you can't just, say, well, the potential for this is $10 million and go from there. But
But see, once you've defined that, now we start getting toward the strategy. Like, okay, how are you going to sell? How are you going to penetrate this market? How am I going to sell boat anchors to 350,000 sailboat owners? If I'm going to sell, 5% of those, or say 10% of those, how do I sell that many boat anchors? Now you're down that path. But at least you've got something that you're starting with something real.
Yeah, good points. Very good points. Make it real. Those 3 words, make it real, because when you have numbers, and you have, as you said, somebody sitting there with a brain on and a calculator in front of them. If you give them numbers and something to work with, then you're real. If you're just spouting your ideas and your idealisms, to be honest, then they can't relate to that. It's just not. It doesn't make sense.
Well, one of the VCs in Silicon Valley said to me one day, we were in my office and I was showing him my system, and he goes, okay, show me something I can believe. I got to tell you, anytime you walk in and you pitch investors or really anybody, the whole thing is show me something I can believe, because sales pitches are often unbelievable. Venture capital pitches are often unbelievable. I hate that word unbelievable. The is the operative part in there. They should say non-believable. So yeah, that's just the part about building trust, is start out with something believable.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So do we have any other insights here, or do we want to open it up, invite our audience to ask questions, or what parting thoughts do we have here?
Actually, I was moved by the last words of Burke, because yes, unfortunately, many entrepreneurs starting business have those expectations without numbers. Yes, I agree. Sometimes it's even not only unrealistic, but sometimes it's like a kind of a fantasy. So yes. Oh, oh, oh.
That's my alarm. I got a thing, a hard stop in 5 minutes or however many minutes we have left.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Roy, do you have any comments?
No, I think really there's a new solution here if we're all working on it together. So I'm just looking at it in that approach. If there isn't any reason for a company, if there isn't any reason for, if there isn't any goal for an entrepreneur or a business owner, then the whole thing doesn't really get started. Once you have a reason to be able to create a company and you have objectives, then the rest of us can really fill in the gaps, maybe starting with a business plan next. And then Greg and Betty and I are really implementers for that plan. So I can really see where the five of us could create a solution that would be much greater than any competition we could have. It would be for the right people, but I'm seeing that there's a market for what we could do as a group.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. I think, yes. So they're all of the perspectives can combine and provide some pretty good solutions here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm even getting a visual of this. Maria has the overarching technology to bring the vision into complete clarity, and Burke has the tools to do the nuts and bolts and run the numbers. So you get people with large resources behind you, and then our core team of Roy and Greg and Betty can implement those tactics and get it done.
I see that too. Yeah.
Yeah, get it done.
Sounds great.
It sounds good.
We can do this.
Our usual motto is just do it, right?
Yeah.
But just do it with strategy and planning.
Yeah, I like that better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the three questions you really need to answer if you're talking to investors, really anybody, is why your product, why now, and why from you. And so those are the main things. Is like the mouse trap. Why a mouse? Well, I got a mouse problem. Okay, why your product? Well, this trap's better. And why for me? Well, because I have a thing about mice. Whatever that is. And so that brings up the question: what's a nice person like? I ask it like this: what's a nice person like you doing in a business like this? And oftentimes, I can give them my whole story about the mercenary and the missionary. But the idea is that what's a nice person like you doing it? What's your motivation? What's your why? In a way, is so like mine. The 200 mile per gallon carburetor is like, where'd they go? I mean, it's just so frustrating. And I hear so many people with some great ideas. Oh man, you could turn that into a business. They don't even get it. And so your why is, what is it? My grandfather died of this. Well, I'm not going to let that ever happen again. I knew these people. I helped them with the business plan. They were about their kid drowned in a pool. Horrible, but they want to prevent other people's kids from drowning in pools. So that's their reason. They invented this thing to keep kids from drowning in pools. And so there's this motivation beyond the money. What that tells the investor is that you'll stay with this thing no matter what, because you're motivated beyond the money. Now, you may be a crappy business person, but that can be fixed. But nevertheless, the motivation to stay with it. Because in real estate, it's location, location, location. For investors betting on companies, it's management, management, management. And every single success book I've ever read, and I've read a lot of them, the one thing I would say that's always consistent with them is persistence, persistence, persistence. So someone with a good why is going to be persistent enough to succeed. And that's a big deal.
That it is.
Absolutely. Someone with a good why. Betty's really good at that, sitting down with people to figure out what their why is. That's from your ghostwriting experience and everything else. So that's
it goes back to the 3 central principles of rhetoric coming from thousands of years ago. They always work. It's a technology that always gets your message across in a persuasive way. And since we all have a hard stop coming up in a minute, I will not go into that system right now, but it always works.
Yeah, that sounds like a topic for another show.
Great cliffhanger there. Yeah.
A big cliffhanger. Okay. So, yeah, I guess we'll let everybody continue on with their day. Welcome to come to Total Traffic and Conversion. And it's always a fun adventure. And thank you very much for Maria for making the trip all the way across the ocean from Bulgaria. And yeah, so we have the continent covered here. Roy's over on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. You guys are California. So we got sort of North, South, and East covered here now. And now
Maria and I got to keep it upward.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Anyway, so everybody go and enjoy your Friday, and I'm going to play this little video again, and thank you.
Thank you, Maria.